Lovers of lore, thank you for joining me for this installment of the Phyrexia All Will Be One story. We start out this part of the story with Elspeth and the other planeswalkers in the Fair Basilica. They had just crashed down through the ceiling via the Colosseum. Nahiri was gone, sacrificing herself to get them this far. And while they talked about it, they took stock of their surroundings. Alabaster and crimson all around them. The entire place was made in Norn's image. Horrific organic structures loomed, but there were no Phyrexians in sight. However, a faint song was audible. It was uncomfortable, and it felt like it was emanating from the buildings all around them. While they spoke about Nahiri, they said that she was corrupted, and Melira explained she could have saved Nahiri, but it would have taken days they didn't have. Kea asks, "Can you heal Jace?" Melira nods, but says, "I don't think that he'll let me though." Jace's arm where Vraska had wounded him was blackened. Wires visibly protruded. Jace spoke into their minds. "I'm not risking you all by delaying to heal me. I already lost Vraska." The discussion then turned to Vraska. Kaito hoped she was dead, which was grim, but it was much better to not face her due to her strength. There was also the concern that Nahiri might have actually survived and was now on Phyrexia's side. Kea spotted that one of the structures was an unbelievable monstrosity with an inverted teardrop of white metal that contained a giant empty red eye socket. Koth explained that Elish Norn has her favorites, the ones who fight best for and also against her, ossified, turned into statues. They were dangerous as sometimes they came to life again. This was a considerable problem. The horrific statue was directly in the only path forward to the Seed Core, where their ultimate goal, Realmbreaker, was located. Tyvar was still insistent that the Phyrexians couldn't possibly have a world tree. The world tree grows in the cosmos. It exists inside and outside of reality at the same time. Even if the Phyrexians had a seed, when it sprouted, it should have split New Phyrexia in half. Melira was the only one so far who had seen the tree due to her immunity to Phyrexian corruption. She confirmed that the tree was indeed massive. The branches reach up into the Mycosynth gardens. The branches are distorted and watery looking, and this makes Tyvar realize that Norn is creating omen paths somehow. These are gates to other worlds. With this realization, Tyvar says we have to go now. If that thing attacks us, so be it. Norn's altar is close, so they head forwards, and it turns out the statue is actually not animate, and it doesn't bother them. When they arrived at the altar's door, it was already open. Tyvar was wary. This feels like a trap. His voice was quiet because the walls were lined with ossified Phyrexians of all types. These were Norn's favorites. Kea agreed with Tyvar. We probably are walking into a trap. We all get scattered. The Vraska situation was way too convenient. They're definitely using a Johnny's knowledge of all of us against us. Melira says Norn is smart, but not all-knowing. The rebellion has her distracted. So they found Norn's throne room, and it was eerily empty. The route to the Mycosynth Gardens was below her throne room, so they grouped closer together as they descended. The feeling of walking into a trap intensified. They had met no opposition so far. Tyvar had to fight the urge to transform his skin. He couldn't afford to waste magic, but this place made the usually confident warrior uneasy. Melira warned them against touching the walls or any other part of the Mycosynth. Phyrexia's taint was infused within it. Now Jace was getting worse. Jace's eyes glowed a faint blue as he spoke again into their minds. "We must go deeper." Melira led them to a pile of weird fungus strands. She explained that anything touched by the strand is infected, and this was the path to the Seed Core. So they devised a plan to get around it by using Tyvar's magic. It was something that he could imbue into others. So the plan became for him to convert all of the Planeswalker's skin into Glimmervoid metal, and then, after they've passed through the strands, Kaito would use his magic to remove the oil like he did in the battle previously. Tyvar went on to explain that while his magic was in effect, the other walkers wouldn't be able to access their magic. So Tyvar would have to release his magic so Kaito would be able to remove the oil, and as a result, they'd be required to rely on the protection from the dose of Halo that everyone took earlier. So Tyvar gathered everyone around him, and his skin began to change. The glimmer metal spread across his body and on to the other planeswalkers. The Phyrexian corruption in Jace proved the only real difficulty, and even that didn't take too long for Tyvar to subdue. When he finished, he motioned for them to move as one. They quickly passed through the tendrils, which smeared them in Phyrexian oil. Afterwards, Kaito used his magic to remove the oil, and together they beheld Realmbreaker, the massive Phyrexian world tree. It was made of white metal, reaching into the sky, with big red fissures that wept disgusting Phyrexian oil. The highest branches were already reaching out to the blind eternities, and at the same time, Phyrexian invasion ships hovered all around the tree. A giant white light pulsed. The branches grew further upwards. At that point, the collective planeswalkers broke into a run towards Realmbreaker. They were almost at the tree when there was another burst of light. This one dazzlingly bright, with rainbow smears leading to the blind eternities. Kea was despondent. It was all for nothing. Norn has access to the blind eternities. Jace collapsed, worn out from running and from the Phyrexian corruption running through his body. The others weren't willing to give up hope so easily. Yes, Phyrexia had just managed to connect Realmbreaker to the blind eternities, but they could still undo or at least limit the damage. So Tyvar scoops Jace up after converting himself back to Glimmervoid metal, and they head into the dark opening at the base of Realmbreaker. And inside, they find a dais, and atop that dais, chained and broken, was Karn. His form was torn apart and spread across the dais. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. "Without the Sylex, we can't stop them." They explained to Karn that they actually had a new Sylex, and he urged them onwards. Koth and Malira stayed back to free Karn, while the rest pushed forwards. They came across a replica of Norn's altar, but this time it was made directly out of Realmbreaker's roots. High above them, Phyrexians piled on board countless invasion vessels. Kaito was stunned. There were millions of Phyrexians. They had only sent a fraction of their forces to take Dominaria. There was a noise behind them, and they turned to find a Johnny wearing an abomination. Metallic red and white armor literally growing out of his own body. He had clearly been marked out by Norn. And alongside of Johnny was Tybalt, who was now all angular bony plates, and his tail had been split lengthwise into two stingers that dripped Phyrexian oil. A Johnny had a smile on his face. He was pleased. "Welcome, Elspeth. I'm glad you've come to join me." Elspeth was disgusted. "I'm here to stop you." A Johnny looked confused. "But we can have the peace and harmony you've always wanted. All will be one." "Never!" Elspeth spat. Tyvar, for his part, calmly faced off with Tybalt. "You always were a monster. That look suits you." Tyvar called out to the others. "Me and Elspeth will take care of these two. It's our destiny. Go." So Jace, Kaito, and Kaya headed onwards, while behind them was the sound of battle and screaming. All right, my friends, that ends this installment of the Phyrexia All Will Be One story. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what we're doing here, you can support the channel either by joining the channel membership or on Patreon. big shout out to our channel patrons. Thanks for supporting what we do. Go ahead and enjoy some more lore while you're here. And remember, my friends, lore is life.